Well, the Project for a New America Century is a think tank. It's a very pretty extreme right-wing think tank, and it drafted a document in September 2000 in the course of the presidential election campaign for Bush, which is called Strengthening America's Defenses. And it makes very interesting reading. It's pretty chilling. It talks in regard to the Middle East about how the flow of oil into the international markets had been interrupted by Saddam Hussein's regime, and that it was necessary to remove that, and if necessary by military means. Don't forget, this was written in September 2000. That is a year before 9/11 and 3 years before the Iraq War. It also says, very significantly, that even if Saddam Hussein were removed from the scene, it would still be necessary to take this action in the Middle East. So the American motive is revealed by this, not to be antagonism to Saddam Hussein, because who we all know is a brutal, sadistic tyrant, but it is not the human rights issues or the justice issues. It is the fact that he stood in the way of American control over oil. He used it for his interests, not the Americans' interests, and that was not acceptable to the US. What the PNAC document also goes on to say is that we need to resist any country or group of countries, for which read the EU or Japan, challenging us, challenging our leadership or our regional leadership. It talks about the need for American space forces, because the Americans supported the militarization of space and they wish to be in control of that. They talk about full spectrum dominance. In other words, American control over every aspect of military conflict, and one of those is control over the internet, so that there cannot be any cybernetic opposition to US interests. It talks about the need for more US forces in Southeast Asia. And although it doesn't actually say the need for regime change in China, that would be going too far. The implication is that we need to exert more pressure for the kind of change that we would like to see in that region. And indeed, even that has happened because China, Russia, Iran are all, at the moment, circled by American bases. There are now 700 bases. There are about American bases across the world. There are, I think, something of the order of 135 countries out of 190 that now have American bases in them. That's about 70% of all the countries in the world. So we have seen this explosion of American power, physical control on the ground, using every opportunity. Unrest in the Caucasus, the southern flank of the Soviet Russia, the so-called Orange and Tulip and other revolutions occurring there, which is trying to get Western control of those countries to get the oil out of the Caspian. So all of this has happened, which I think largely reflects what was always the policy of the Bush administration, as revealed by this PNAC document. What it ends by saying, which I think is very, very interesting, is that this, it says at the end of the document, is going to take a long time. I think you can underline those words. It's going to take a long time. Absent, which is the American word for except there is a catastrophic or catalyzing event like Pearl Harbor. I think there are three things that are needed. First of all is we have to reduce our use of oil, our use of fossil fuels, oil, coal and gas. Secondly, we need much more energy efficiency, that is the improved use of energy. And thirdly, the switch to renewable sources of energy, solar, biomass and wind, in particular, tidal power as well. If you look at energy efficiency, the potential here is very great, because the waste of energy in our Western civilization is simply prodigious. One way of looking at this is the amount of energy when you drive a car which actually reaches the wheels. It's only 15%. 85% doesn't actually drive the vehicle at all. If you look at cooking food, which families do every single day across the world, but with a standard oven in the Western civilization, less than a quarter of that heat and energy actually reaches the food. And what I think is really just staggering, if you look at US power stations, they discard heat, waste heat, which is sufficient to power the entire Japanese economy. The waste of energy is absolutely prodigious. And it has been calculated that if there was an improvement of something like 3 miles per gallon efficiency in fuel economy in US cars and light vehicles, that would be enough for the US to forego oil imports from the Gulf, which you might have thought was a rather better way of solving the problem than launching an unprovoked and illegal war against Iraq. And even if we were to improve by something like 3% a year in energy intensity, that would be enough, it has been calculated, by the end of this century to achieve the same amount of utilization of power as we have today at 1/4 of the availability of energy. So the potential for greater use of energy is absolutely enormous. And if people turn around, governments or individuals or industry, and say, well, this is a terrible problem, what can we do about it? The answer is that there is an enormous amount that we can do about it. In terms of the use of petrol or diesel or gasoline in cars and planes, in terms of greater efficiency in energy and industry. I mean, in Britain we have a climate change levy, which is designed to make industry utilize its energy more efficiently. And of course, individuals, you and I, are able to do so much. We can insulate our houses better. We can consider the use of car more efficiently. Don't forget that 1/8 of all car journeys are less than a mile. Half of all car journeys in the West are less than 2 miles. It would be better for us either to walk, that's probably the best thing, or to cycle or go on public transport. We don't have to use a car. And of course, many of the devices and household equipment that we have around the house is, again, very wasteful of energy. And all of this can be improved. And it would be better for us, it'll cost us less, it'll help our wallet or our purse, and it'll be better for the environment, and it'll reduce the amount of scarce energy that we consume. So it's a win-win-win situation. So for goodness sake, why don't we do it?